And then I wanted to share something really nice. I got word this week that my stepfather, Neil Clark of blessed memory, that his brothers, Lenny and Marvin Clark.
Sound going out or sound coming in?
I want to hear.
Okay. I'm going to go over here.
That his brothers and
Okay.
sister, his brothers and sister made a very generous donation to the Jewish Experience to also add to the sponsorship of this class in memory of Neil and in memory of my mom. So that was so nice. I wanted to share that with all of you, and I'm so grateful for that. And it's so lovely. And just explaining to the people of the Jewish Experience of who was who and who was related to who, that was a little confusing. I think, no, wait a minute, who goes with who? I'm like, well, it's my stepfather and it's their brother and sister-in-law. I said, and then everybody's spelling of their names. So anyway, we've got all that. So I just want to publicly thank them. They're obviously not on this call and on our class, but to thank them to joining in along with Della and with Ray and with the Jaspies, and your contributions just mean so much and allow us to do great things together. So thank you very much. And hello, Kay. I haven't seen you for such a long time. It's great to see you. It's wonderful. Okay, this week is a very special parsha. It is the parsha of Bishalach, and the parsha of Bishalach features a very momentous scene, which is the splitting of the sea when the Jews, after they leave Egypt and Pharaoh changes his mind and kind of in a moment of buyer's remorse of what was I thinking, letting them go, turns around and has his chariots and his men chase after the Jewish people to bring them back to Egypt. And they are not landlocked. They have their backs against the water, and then the Egyptians on the other side with no place to go. There are all sorts of beautiful midrashim that talk about how the water actually split, with Nachshon ben Aminadav from the tribe of Yehuda being the first one to walk into the water till it was above his nose, and then the water split. That at first Moshe, it was kind of the first time Moshe gave a command that God asked him, why are you saying that? Because Moshe said to the Jewish people, just stand here and be silent and God will save you. And God was like, why are you telling him to do that? March forward, just go. This is not the time for prayer. This is not the time for standing still and watching. This is the time for, you need to have a part in this miracle, which is you have to have the emunah, you have to have the faith to march forward and go in, and then the miracles will happen. So this was truly a miracle that happened on literally the backs of the Jewish people who expressed faith going in. Again, there's other midrashim that talk about how the water parted, not necessarily like it did in the movies where it all parts and the Jewish people walk through, but rather the water opened like a zipper. And literally with each step they took, it opened more and more, which meant that with each step was an act of faith, that they didn't know in advance that the water was going to open up for sure, that it opened as they took each step. And you think about that's a very, very different spiritual scenario of, I mean, I don't know, it seems to me on one level, just seeing a sea split, how much faith would you have to walk into that, not knowing how long it was going to stay split? Because it wasn't like the timer was going, and they didn't run, they walked, gracefully and nicely through it. They didn't race through it, but they didn't know how long it was going to stay open or really what was going to happen. But then you add to it the idea that the water only opened up with each step of the person in front, and then became wider and wider and then closed after them onto the Egyptians. So this event triggers the first ever song. So the song that the Jewish people sing after they cross the Red Sea and not the Sea of Reeds, not only do they cross it, but after the Egyptians themselves are drowned in it and their bodies wash up on shore along with the jewels that they had, the jewels that were bedecking their horses and their chariots and them. And the Jewish people were, instead of collecting shells by the seashore, they were collecting jewels by the seashore, and they got very wealthy just from getting that. So after they did that, Then it says that the Jewish people sang a song of gratitude to God, of like, you would think that they would have sung something as they left Egypt, but that was not the same as what they experienced when they crossed the sea. And then for sure, things were in a much better place for them. So consequently, this Shabbos is called Shabbat Shira, the Shabbos of song. And it features actually 3 songs. It features the song at the sea that was sung by all the Jewish people. And then it also features Miriam's song, which is brief but poignant. And so her song is in here as well. And in addition, the Haftorah that is read on Shabbos.
No.
The Haftorah
It was like the only thing I was really working my whole.
The Haftorah that was read on Shabbos, that will be read on Shabbos, is the Haftorah that is called Deborah's song. Deborah the judge, Deborah the military strategist, Deborah the one who sat under Deborah's palm tree and judged the Jewish people, and there was peace for 40 years, which is a really long time. Just looking at the current world is like a peace for 40 minutes. 40 days would be amazing. So it is something that we can appreciate of how incredible her leadership was. So we have the Song of the Sea, we have Miriam's song, and we have Deborah's song. Consequently, we call this Shabbos Shabbat Shira, the Shabbos of song. So what's a little unusual is the entire Torah is a song. If you go to the synagogue, you sing the entire Torah. So what's different about this song versus any of the rest of the Torah, which is also song? So first of all, this is a song that came from the Jewish people. They sang this song. This was not God speaking to them, which is the rest of the Torah, of God's words to us, but our response. And our response of being at the level of song is considered to being at a level of nevuah, of prophetic clarity that the Jewish people had. So I want to talk about the song itself. And this comes from, I had an idea in my head already about what I wanted to talk about. And then I read from our new friend, Rabbi David Rossman, whose home we stayed at when we were in quarantine in Jerusalem. And his book is called Torah Connections. And he raised an idea that fit in exactly with what I wanted to talk about. So I told Steve, I'm so excited this fit in exactly with what I wanted to talk about. And what he talks about is the actual structure of the song. If you've ever seen the Torah open, or if you've seen it for the Song of the Sea, you'll notice very, very easily that it has a very different design than the entire rest of the Torah. So I want to share the screen here and show this to you. And let's see if I can do this right here. If it doesn't freeze, we'll see if it comes up. It's spinning. We'll see if it comes up. Yes, there it is. Okay, this here is the Song of the Sea. And the way it's laid out, you can tell it looks almost like brickwork. And the words are very, very spread out. This is very unusual. You'll also notice the beautiful calligraphy that is the calligraphy that is in a Torah scroll, which in and of itself is amazing. So the question is, why is there so much space? Why is there so much white space? There's space not only between sentences, but within sentences as well. It's just a lot of space. It says, what is space for? So I'm going to just take a look at this. You'll be able to see it. You can see it in your Chumash. It's also written the same way. It's even in your prayer book. The Song of the Sea is part of our daily prayers, and we'll talk about that in a minute why. But so you can just kind of hold this picture in your mind, and you see that this is a very airy, light, space-filled song that we are here. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay. So the question is why? Why all the space? It says, what's the space for in the Torah? It says the spaces, all the spaces in the Torah are there for thinking. Between every parsha, there are 9 white spaces. So it's like in music. Why are there spaces in music? Why don't you just have one note right after the next? First of all, we couldn't even take it in. There has to be some air. There needs to be some space. So we even say this, you know, in the vernacular is like, you know, I just need some space, or I don't have enough headspace for this, right? So like, what does that mean? It means literally, I don't have enough space to think. I don't have the time to think. I don't have the space to think. This space is about thinking. And why on the song? It says, because they were finally free. They were only a certain level of free when they left Egypt and walked out of Mitzrayim, and they got to a new level of free, and we're going to talk about that, when they could have the freedom to think. Until then, they were preoccupied, various levels of being preoccupied. And when somebody is preoccupied, distracted, overwhelmed with worry or thoughts that are, you know, to talk about people who have obsessive thought disorders, all sorts of things. What's going on in here controls everything else. It says the Jewish people finally got to a place where they were free. How did that work, and what was the nature of that freedom? So we've talked in the past about, you know, the bondage of their bodies, on the bondage of their spirit, the bondage of their speech, but this is the bondage of thought. They could not have enough time, space to think. So where do we see this? So it's very interesting. I'd never thought of it before. This comes also from Rabbi Rossman, points this out. Our sages have noticed that when Moshe first comes to Egypt to tell the Jewish people, you're going to be redeemed, what's their response? What's their response? Does anybody want to offer? You can unmute yourself and say, what happens when Moshe first tells them that they're going to be redeemed? What's their response? Does anybody know?
I think they really believed it. You
They
know?
did, yeah, exactly. So exactly, they believed it, and you can find that in chapter 4, and it is in verse 29 through 31. Moses and Aaron go down, they gather all the elders of the children of Israel. Aaron speaks, Moshe performs the signs, and verse 31, and the people believed, and they heard that Hashem had remembered the children of Israel, and that he saw their affliction, and they, the Jewish people, bowed their heads and prostrated themselves, and there, as they say, literally they were down with the Exodus. They're like, we're good. We believe this, we're ready, and we're carrying on. It's only a short time later that we have a different verse that speaks exactly the opposite, which is in Parsha Va'era, and that is in Exodus chapter 6, starting with verse 6. So it's chapter 6, verse 6. And in there, God is telling the Jewish people about all of the salvations that are going to happen to the Jewish people. And those we commemorate with our 4 cups of wine at our Seder, that it's going to be, I'm going to rescue you, redeem you, I shall take you out, and you shall know that I'm Hashem, etc. And I'll bring you to the land about which I raised my hand. And the response of the Jewish people is, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Verse 10, it says, verse 9. So Moses spoke accordingly to the children of Israel, but they did not heed Moshe because of shortness of breath and hard work. It says they were too much was happening. It's like, what happened between they believed and they prostrated and all good? And I can't hear you anymore. It's like, well, there was a very important thing that happened that changed their reality and changed their headspace and took away their ability to think, to absorb anything. They could not function. What happened? When Moshe first goes to Pharaoh to ask for the Jewish people to be released, to go out into the wilderness, Pharaoh says no. And not only does he say no, but he tells Moshe, like, your people are lazy. And from now on, there's going to be, we're not giving you the straw for the bricks. They're going to have to go out and get their own straw. So that was always what I knew and understood, is that because they had to work so much harder, Pharaoh's job was, it really didn't make sense from a productivity perspective. If you're trying to get something built, I don't know, even the worst contractor does not send the builders out to go collect their own materials and bring it to the work site. That's like the height of stupidity of how you work a building project, if that's your goal. But that wasn't the goal. The goal wasn't a building project. The goal was how to defeat the Jewish people. The goal was don't give them any time to think. Don't give them any time to stay at all free whatsoever. How do I press you? Not just by filling up your time, but by distracting you so you can't think. That's what makes somebody truly enslaved. Not only that, the commentator says Pharaoh took away their 1 day off. Moshe had earlier arranged for them to have Saturday off, to be off on Shabbos. And that 1 day off was enough to keep them focused so that they could function. And they just needed 1 day of rejuvenation, recreation, reconnection, and they could have a presence of mind. But Pharaoh took that day away, took Shabbos away from them. And so then they were working literally 24/7. Some people, that's how they spend their lives now. And there's no even Pharaoh making them do that. So 24/7, just on. They didn't have any time to think. When they leave Egypt and they cross the sea and the Egyptians are truly dead and gone, then it says they are finally free. And that freedom, that true freedom they had was not just their bodies were free, but their minds were free. And when a person's mind is free, it becomes creative. And when your mind is creative, you can enter a whole different dimension of thinking and your reality changes. So today what we're going to talk about is monitoring, managing, being aware of our thoughts. How can we stay truly thought-free? And we say, just to kind of reconnect this, every morning in our morning davening. So if you have the regular Art Scroll Siddur, for example, we say the Song of the Sea. We say the Song of the Sea and we look at the way it looks on the page, which is on page 78 and 79. And there we see a little mini version and you get to see the Song of the Sea. And every day you get across it and come to the other side and say, my mind is free. I can think what I want to think. Now, however, what do we have the challenge is we become our own pharaohs and we oppress ourselves with either mind-numbing activities or just distraction, and we don't give ourselves any time to think. It's like, I haven't had a moment to think. Anybody here ever say that or think that? I haven't had a moment to think. I need some space. My head space, I don't have it. So we surround ourselves, whether it's with social media or distraction or other thoughts that we're going to talk about that are distracting thoughts as opposed to thoughts that are productive, that get in our way of being truly free. So when we say this song every single day, it is a reminder to have the freedom that God has actually given us. So it's not so easy because our thoughts are weird. Okay, thoughts are weird. What kinds of things do? They sneak up on us. And then they're habitual. And then they are chained one thing to the next. So just even before you know it, you're thinking about something, and it's often thinking about something, I will say, negative or worrisome. Those tend to be our automatic go-to thoughts, are something that we're worried about or something negative that we're rehashing of a conversation from the past, a situation that we're having difficulty dealing with. You name it. You pick that station, and you can call it the worry station. You can call it the, what's it called? What's the word? Ruminate station. There's all these stations that we have that we go to that are our basic thoughts. And it's a little bit like I said, I was thinking this was not Rabbi Rossman. I thought our thoughts are a lot like how Facebook, the logarithm that Facebook uses, which is if you click on something on Facebook, then guess what you're going to see more of when the next time you go to Facebook. Anything you click on, it figures out you must be interested in this. And so it inundates you with things that are related to that. It says our minds do the same thing. You think about something and then your mind is like, oh, she wants to think about, how people have disappointed her, how it wasn't fair, how things didn't work out the way I wanted. All these things, it's like, I will select that for you because that's clearly what you indicated you wanted to think about because that's what you were thinking about. So this can be good or it can be very negative, because if we choose to think about thoughts that are positive, helpful, constructive, focused on gratitude, growthful, it will also select that. So when we think about what our thoughts are doing, we have to think about how much management, and people, make jokes about like the thought police, but we need to be the thought police of our own minds because of what our thoughts can do to us and how they can affect us. So let's see a couple other things that we're going to learn from the parsha about how we think about things and the impact that it has on us. But before we go ahead to those examples, if anybody has a comment or wanted to offer something, please feel free to unmute, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Does anybody have anything? No? I don't want to miss anybody if you have something. I'm trying to look at anybody who's okay. If you think of something, please feel free to jump in. Okay, so let's go to some thoughts and things that we learned from this parsha.
Ellen?
Yes, Gabi.
I just want to add it's so true what you're saying, that the thoughts create energy, create reality, and they're really promoting now that we visualize in pictures. That's the only way, subconscious things, not words, pictures. A good, positive dreams that we have for us, our kids, our family, our friends, all positive, and it can come true because thoughts can create reality. It's huge. It's energy of the thoughts can create
energy
reality.
Of the thoughts are it's like an electrical system, because the thoughts we have turn into they turn into actions. That's the problem, is they turn into emotions, and which has an incredible amount of energy, just as the word emotion, it motivates us in certain directions, and then those emotions will trigger actions. So getting a grasp on the thoughts, and the thoughts are very much connected to, as you said, Gabi, about a visualization. If you think about things that we worry about, we have scenes that come into our mind of things that we are worried about that are going to happen. Some may have not so much of a visual thing, but it ends up being like a picture. We scare ourselves half to death about all sorts of things. And we have a picture of ourselves. We have a picture of ourselves, of our self-image, that's a thought that is also based on a picture of a visualization. So for sure, it's going to change how we experience our reality. If it does not, which by definition really is changing the reality itself, because our experience of reality is our reality. Try telling somebody who's experiencing reality differently that they're not experiencing reality, and they will fight you tooth and nail. It's like, no, my perception of this reality is reality. It's like, it's your perception of the reality. So to know that we can influence ourselves and that we have such power to do that. So let's explore a couple of examples that are mentioned here. Okay. One is, it says that this comes from, again, this is from Rabbi Zelig Pliskin, and is in his book, Growth Through Torah. And he is talking about specifically this chapter 14, verse 13. And this again is at the sea. It says, and Moshe said to the people, do not be afraid, stand and you will see the salvation of the Almighty that he will do for you this day. So we've always talked about it, like, should they stand, should they move forward, etc. But there's another question that our sages ask, which is, why didn't they fight them? The Jews outnumbered the Egyptians. The Jewish people were like 3 million people. Why did they not turn around and fight? Why didn't they do something? Why were they so scared? Like, well, they were scared for a very good reason, a very good psychological reason. So Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz says, the Ibn Ezra says that the Egyptians had been the masters of the Israelites, and that the people who went out from Egypt had learned from their youth to bear the yoke of the Egyptians, and they felt inferior to them. They were unable to fight against their masters. They were psychologically saw themselves as slaves, that the Egyptians were superior, and that they could not even mount a fight because of where they were psychologically. So this is a message. Now, this was totally justified. If you're a slave for 210 years, you have every reason to have a negative feeling about yourself. However, many people are walking around with negative feelings about themselves that have not been in 210 years of slavery. They were, however, perhaps the products of not good parenting, of teachers who were not good, of bosses who were bullies, of coaches who were, whatever, something negative in that way. So that there's 100 different ways that a person can be the product of being beaten down. A wife who's been abused, I can't leave. My husband told me that I'm a whatever, and I'm worthless, and blah, blah, blah. Psychological studies have shown it does not take too long to beat somebody down. And then the worst is when we add our own voices to it and we beat ourselves down. And we have negative things to say about ourselves. Like, oh, I can't do it. Think about somebody who is discouraged. I don't have the ability. I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not whatever enough to do whatever it might be. The person has lost before they've even started. They can't face their challenges because they've already undermined themselves with their thoughts about themselves. So we're supposed to, as much time as we think about teshuvah and doing repentance and working on ourselves and identifying our shortcomings and all that, we have to spend, if not the same amount of time, maybe more time, focusing and thinking about and visualizing and verbalizing our strengths. First of all, the Jewish people had God on their side. That should have been their first hint that things were going to be okay. But that didn't even help them because of the place where they were coming from. But to be able to say, it's just like in an organization, even after an event, what do? You have what's called a SWOT analysis, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the T, threats, which I don't really like that word. I want to find a different word. Anyway, but you start with your strengths. What was good about this? What's good about your organization? What do you have to work with? There's a business person who just looks at their business and looks at their liabilities and doesn't look at their assets cannot be in business. So we do the same thing, and we better have a really good grasp of what our strengths are. Now, this is hard because people think that they're being egotistical by saying what their strengths are. And women especially have a hard time with this. If you have a group of women gathered together and you ask them to make a list of 5 things that are real strengths of theirs, they'll sit there and kind of, what should I say? And they won't be able to come up with it so easily. But if you ask them for 5 things that are shortcomings or challenges they have, they can write that down immediately. So we tend to have a pretty good grasp, unless we're kind of disconnected, of what our limitations are. And we somehow feel not entitled to talk about what our strengths are. And the favor we do to other people, to share with them what we see their strengths as being. You would think that it would be obvious that, of course, everybody knows what their strengths are. People don't know. They don't know, and they need to be told, and we need to tell ourselves. So the Jewish people learned that. We learned that from the Jewish people about how important it is to have a full grasp of what our strengths are so that we can face the challenges that we have. That's what we're supposed to do. But if we don't know what we are even working with, we will be doomed before we begin. Any thoughts just on that one of just having sense? Marty, why don't you unmute yourself and tell us what you're thinking?
I just want to see if I'm getting the scenario correct here of what you're saying. So are you talking about once you were talking about the Song of the Seas when they all got up on the shore and realized that all the Egyptians were gone. However, given that they didn't fight because of the slave mentality, and I know this is common to people who've been enslaved, what were the next steps? I mean, yes, they started to sing, but on the other hand, when people are finally free, a lot of times they don't know what to do. Yes. They're like just standing there going, what? Uh-oh.
Yeah, they're not.
What's now?
Yeah.
So what happened? What was the next step after that?
After the singing?
Well, I mean, I assume what we're saying is everybody broke out in song. I mean, I don't know how exactly that works.
Yeah, they broke out in song. It was like a spontaneous song of clarity. So the Torah version of when song happens is when there's total clarity and you get it. You get the before, like why things were the way they were. It's like when all your questions are answered and you have total clarity. In fact, the specific wording that's used, it says that the I don't know if you like this word, the lowliest maidservant, whatever that means, had the spiritual clarity of Ezekiel the prophet, who's known as being kind of like the most out there prophet, had that kind of clarity. That was only after they went through the water, though, and had the experience and saw the Egyptians dead. But beforehand, when they were on the other, on side A, before when the Egyptians were racing after them, that's when they were like, they didn't even think of fighting. It wasn't even a thought. They couldn't get there.
So when they came out to the other side, then was it just a group thing? Now we know what to do. Now we get it.
Yes, now we get it. And the song was the evidence that they got it. And that was like their total seeing God clearly, believing in Moshe as the leader of the people. Now that clarity, I will tell you, didn't last so long, because it was only a few verses later that they're complaining about something and why did you take us out of Egypt, and we would have been better being dying there. So that's one of the challenges about spiritual clarity, is that it doesn't have a long shelf life. It's the half-life is short. So it says unless we take whatever clarity we gain at any time, whether, and that was a pretty major thing. I mean, splitting of the sea, I think most of us would say, if I saw that, I'm telling you, I'd be good to go with spiritual clarity for the rest of my life. And we're here to say, no, you wouldn't, because human nature is to come down from peak experiences unchanged, unless it is somehow captured in some sort of a physical action or something that makes that real. So you have to anchor it, otherwise it just dissipates. So they had it. In fact, one of the commentaries says this maidservant who has this epiphany, it says, and after it was over, guess what? She was still a maidservant. It didn't change her day, and it didn't change her life. And you ask people who have had incredible experiences, good or bad. Sometimes people have something that's really awful, and they say like, this is going to change my life, how I look at things. And some people it does, and some people it doesn't. And they spring back. They've done studies about, people who have won the lottery and like, I'm going to be so happy, I won the lottery, blah, blah, blah. And I think 4 months or 6 months afterwards, they feel the way they felt before they won the lottery. And people who have something horrible happen to them, some major illness or whatever, they go down and then they kind of come back to their emotional set point. So our emotional set point plays an important role in helping us kind of navigate life, because we don't want to really be bouncing all over the page. But what it means is, just like our set point in weight, it's really hard to move off of it. And one has to make a real concerted effort to do something to make something last. However, it was a moment. It's like Brigadoon. It was a moment in time. And that's why we have to say the Song of the Sea ourselves every morning. And even if we're using our power of imagination and visualizing whatever, it's like, don't you think when I did said it yesterday, that should last me till today? It's like, nope, not happening. We need it again today. So yes, thank you for your question, Marty. Renee.
Thank you. Okay, so you said, where was it when they got to the other side, before or after the song, when Moshe said, okay, just like take it in, when he said, like,
stand there. That was before. That was while the Egyptians were chasing them. Moshe's perspective was, just as the Jews didn't do anything in Egypt during the plagues, and even during the killing of the firstborn, the Jews had no role in any of that. They were just supposed to just observe and watch God work his magic. So Moshe assumed that was going to be the same strategy.
So it's sort of like telling somebody just to hold steady, just things look messy right now, but just hang in there and hold steady and keep your faith.
It wasn't so much hold steady and keep your faith. It was stand quietly and watch God take care of this. And then God says to Moshe, why are you telling them to stand there? Tell them to move and to go into the water. Oh. That's what he says. So this is Moshe got it wrong. Moshe got it wrong, which is why we say that the splitting of the sea was the first thing, the first miracle that happened that involved us. It was our walking in and our demonstration of emuna and faith, not there's different kinds of emuna. There's the one like, I'm just letting God do God's thing. And then there's like, I'll watch God do God's thing, and God is telling me I need to do my thing too. And so this was very actively done by the Jewish people participating in it, led by Nachshon ben Aminadav. And this leadership, he was the one who went in, and he didn't know how the parsha was going to turn out. I mean, he goes in and it describes it as the water was above his nose. Other people must have thought he was crazy. What are you doing? It was like, well, there's not another option. I'm doing this. This is the only thing to do. So that's what I'm going to do. And sometimes I think we feel ourselves that we're in that situation. It's like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing in this situation. I'm supposed to do something. And it may seem as crazy as going into the water up to my nose, but that may be the very thing that triggers the miraculous response. But God very specifically says to Moshe, don't tell them to stand there. This is not the time. March onward. It's like, oh, never mind, let's move. So that's how that happened. It's kind of funny. It's like one of those moments, one of those Moshe moments. So yeah.
Well, I just hope you speak to the process of anchoring, when we do reach those peak moments,
So that, yes,
because
so that, yes, the anchoring things requires action. So that's what the mitzvot are about, is how we take feelings and turn that into a reality. Because somebody can have an amazing, let's just say, somebody mentioned, even non-Jews, Jews, you go to an inspiring, not that you should all be going to, but a non-Jew goes to an inspiring Easter service at sunrise at Red Rocks. Fair, and they would say, oh, I felt so spiritual. Okay, that's lovely, all lovely, lovely, lovely. That doesn't change anything. Unless it says, and when I came home, I decided to, as the Jews are commanded to do, when I have a glass of water, I'm going to say a blessing and thank God for the amazing creation of something as miraculous as water. Or when I have a piece of fruit, or when I have a piece of bread. So mitzvot basically take inspiration and turn it into reality through an action. You do something with it. Otherwise, it evaporates. And it doesn't matter how profound it is. I mean, every once in a while you'll say, no, that's not true. I know so-and-so, they had a very profound experience and it did change them. Can I tell you that that's more the exception than the rule? Remember how people said that everyone was going to be different after September 11th? Oh, we know we have to be there for each other and help each other and be kind, and no one's ever going to go back to being blah, blah, blah again. Well, how long did that last? A few months. It doesn't work that way. And people even say about the pandemic, we have changed forever. I think people are going to do things differently. There have been previous pandemics in the world, and humanity did not change. Different things changed. Maybe technologies changed, but people did not change. So the responsibility for that transformation is on us. There's not a magical thing that can happen to anybody that's going to work it. We have to work it, and then we'll have something. Etta, yes.
I once heard that the longest distance in the world is between the head and the heart.
Exactly. It says
So about a foot in my case, but I'm sure. But it's like the longest distance because you get that thought and it's wonderful, it's inspiring, but it dissipates faster than dew.
Yes. So it's interesting because our neck is considered the problem. So, like we talk about a bottleneck. It's like, we have a bottleneck on with our neck. It's like, we've got all this great stuff going on up here. My thoughts, my inspiration, blah, blah, blah. And then the rest of my body that actually does something is on the other side of the neck. So how do you get from one side to the next? And so that bottleneck place, that's actually like what Mitzrayim was considered. Mitzrayim means a narrow strait. And that's what it is. It's like we have to get through the narrow strait to go into like to activate the rest of my body. But the truth is hopefully our heads are wired to the rest of our body. So it's just that this is the command center, but it has to command something. It's like, what are you going to do? You have to do something. You can't just sit there with your feelings, no matter how lofty and amazing they are. If only feelings could change people, we would all be in a much better place, but they don't. So we need to take action. So those kind of thoughts of inspiration, thoughts about recognizing our strengths, because we have to have those thoughts and really go through. It says on an everyday basis, when we get up in the morning, we should, Rabbi Pliskin's always all about positive thinking. He said, first of all, you should always smile at yourself in the mirror. And I can guarantee you that the other person's going to smile back at you. I saw a really cute video online that was of like a little dachshund looking in a mirror, and it was a puppy, and it couldn't figure out who the other dog was. And he kept trying to get it. It was really cute. And obviously he was looking at himself, but it was like he couldn't figure that out. So anyway, look in the mirror and say something inspiring to yourself. And it's not considered egotistical. It's considered helpful and honest, and we're supposed to do that. The next one is that we are supposed to take an active role in sweetening our outlook on life. This is positive thought because it has a real taste to it. It has a real taste to it. So this comes from after the Jewish people had crossed the sea. In chapter 15, verse 23, it says they come to a place, it says, and the children of Israel came to Marah, and they were not able to drink the water at Marah, for they were bitter. So anyone who might recognize that word Marah comes from the word mar, which might sound a lot like maror. It says, what does mar mean? Mar means bitter. So they came to this place called Marah. They came to a place called bitterness. And they were not able to drink the water at Marah. And then it says, for they themselves, ki marim haim. So in the English, you lose it, but in the Hebrew, you can hear it. So if I'm telling you that the word mar means bitter, it's the same root as the word marina, like salt water. The reason it's called marine comes from the same word of bitter, of salt water. So in the Hebrew, it says, Vayavo, they came, marata, to Marah, velo yochlu lishtot mayim, they could not drink the water, mi Marah, from Marah, ki marim haim, because they were bitter. So the question is, what was bitter? Who's the they? The water was bitter, or they, the Jewish people, were bitter? So this understanding, one understanding is the reason that the water tasted bitter to them is because they were bitter. Because when somebody has I don't know the Yiddish word exactly, someone will correct me, a verbissener, if you have like a kind of like that kind of, that pinch, like bitter outlook, everything tastes bitter. And even something good tastes bitter to us. So it says that somebody will be able, so it's the Kotzker Rebbe who said that for they were bitter as referring to the people themselves. When someone is bitter himself, everything tastes bitter. And this concept holds true in many areas of life. If a person feels better, nothing in life appears positive. Anyone looking for faults and defects will always be able to find them. A bitter person makes himself miserable, and those in his environment suffer with him. While he thinks he has valid reasons for considering things to be bitter, the source of the problem is not out there, but within himself. By sweetening one's own outlook, one will live in a much sweeter world. It says that this is our obligation, is to sweeten our life. Now, the truth is all of us face situations that are bitter. That's true. And that's a kind of a little bit of a different story. We're talking about the basic attitude towards life that is bitter, where everybody, like the verbissener, like that kind of a face, no matter what's happening to them, you go to the restaurant. In the days when we went to restaurants, the table's not good, the waitress isn't good, the salad was limp, and the steak was overdone, and this was that, and this was, it's like Those kind of people can wear you out. But let me tell you, they're wearing themselves out first, but they're also wearing everybody else out. As opposed to the person that says you have an obligation to sweeten the water and sweeten our dispositions to, and some people say, well, that's just how some people are. It's like, sorry, we don't get a pass on that. That may be how we came into the world, but that's not how we're supposed to leave the world. And some people have to work on it more. Some people do have kind of like a sweeter approach to things. We do know people, they just have like a different, I don't know, they just have a different approach to life, but we're all obligated to work on the sweetening. And when we do that, it says that we will have a much happier life. And those sweet things start with a thought and start with a perspective that we carry with us, that we have to think about also at the beginning of the day, of how we're going to approach our life, or whether it's going to be a sweeten the waters, and that it has the effect of, even when we are dealing with bitter things, because we are, there's a lot to be sad about. There's a lot to be sad about in a lot of different areas, but that's not the whole story. And so it helps us to be able to deal with everything else when we add the sugar. All we have to think about is, what is it? Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So there are times when we do have to swallow a bitter pill. And when we have sugar, and we do that at our Seder, and we talk about it, feels early to talk about Seder, but we're really in the world of Pesach right now, since we're talking about the Exodus from Egypt, that we dip our maror in charosis. Okay, so you're not supposed to have your maror plain. It doesn't say hide all your maror in a vat of charosis. It says to dip it in. That makes it so you can at least eat it. And it still burns, but it also has sweetness in it. So it says that when we do that to our bitter, then we will have a more balanced view of life, and we will be happier people. And the truth is, we'll be able to deal with the bitter things better, because we won't be so drained emotionally, cognitively, physically, in every way, spiritually, because we've brought ourselves down to such a low level. Most people who are in that state of being don't have the wherewithal really to do anything, because they're too busy being bitter. So remember, your mother used to say, when you make a face, if you keep doing that, your face is going to freeze like that, right? Yeah, my face froze, and what can I say? It did freeze like that. It's like, so we have to do things. And what's interesting is a change of expression actually changes the physiology, even if you're not feeling it. It says that when we smile, your brain is smart, but it's not so smart. It doesn't really know that you don't have something to smile about. It just gets the message from the muscles that you're smiling, so there must be something to smile about. And so it triggers a cascade of, I don't know what, hormones, whatever, that changes your physiology. That's really fascinating. Same thing when you read a book and you're reading thoughts, something that is, whether it's arousing or whether it's frightening or whatever. Don't you know that you're sitting on your couch in your house and you're perfectly fine and you're whatever, but whatever you're reading, your brain is processing it as reality. So on one hand, our brain is really smart. On the other hand, not so much, which means that it's very malleable and subject to manipulation by us as the managers of our minds. So to do this, though, we need to have time and space. So going back to our song and the freedom that it represented of the Jewish people being able to say, like Martin Luther King, thank God Almighty, we're free at last. It's like, what does true freedom mean? It means to have a free mind and to be able to have the time and the attention and the focus to have clear thoughts. And people need to give themselves that time. Shabbos is made for a time to clear your thoughts. In fact, one of the hardest things to do, to observe on Shabbos, and one of the most beneficial, is that you're not supposed to think about things that are happening after Shabbos. You live in the present. Do you know how often our minds just skip way ahead, usually to worry? It's not like, oh, I'm gonna spend my time thinking about all the great things that are happening. It's like, no, I'm going to spend my time worrying and going over and over again, ruminating on things that are bothering me and upsetting me. So to keep our minds present and focused, it says that is one of the opportunities and obligations of Shabbos, is to keep our minds in a place of restfulness, to have a rested mind without being in a, it's almost like an active meditative state, because you're not actually meditating, but the day becomes a meditative state of being fully present and giving our mind that space. So this Shabbos, when we say this is the Shabbos of Shira, this is the Shabbos. Shabbos is always a time of space, but this Shabbos of Shira is kind of like squared. So because it's Shabbos anyway, and it's also the Shabbos of the song that is going to remind us of the space and the time that we need. There was Rabbi Rossman gives a quote. It was talking about management, about somebody being a good manager. It was from I don't know if this is a book, and I think it was a book or an article. It's called Leadership the Hard Way, Why Leadership Can't Be Taught and How You Can Learn It Anyway by Dov Froman, Frohman. He pioneered the semiconductor industry, but he talks about the soft skills of hard leadership. And he talks about the leader manager must free up no less than 50% of his time from routine tasks. If you really want to be a manager who leads, you have to have time. You need to have time. We're so busy multitasking. I'm texting as I'm listening, and I'm watching as I'm doing this, and I'm doing this as I'm doing that. It's like, we need uninterrupted time. We don't even know what to do with ourselves. We need time so that we can think when we're not planning anything, where we just think, so that thoughts can come to us and so we can really think things through. So it says that this is even in leadership, so that if you have a position in an organization or in your family or in your community or in your shul or in your life, it's like, how much time do you give yourself to actually not be doing anything and have time to think? So this is our goal for this Shabbat Shira. And that when there is, I think, having the, for me, having Shabbos and having a hard stop, when computer's off, the phone is off. I close the doors now to this whole room. I don't come into the room. It's like this, I'm not doing this. And it's all things I love to do. If I didn't have a hard stop, I have to tell you honestly, it's not like I'm a workaholic. I'm actually kind of lazy. I wouldn't stop, because we just tend to go however we're going. We just kind of keep on going unless something stops us. So that's the law of whatever, entropy or something. Yeah, we just keep going. So in order, we have to have a way to stop. So now we have the Song of the Sea to remind us, just by even looking at the song, the way the song itself is structured is with the reminder to stop, to think, and be truly free. For those of us who have been feeling cooped up in our homes, we're feeling trapped, but you can be free wherever you want and whenever you want by making that choice in our mindset. So that's the goal of this Shabbat Shira. It says, and then you'll have something to sing about, because you'll realize, oh, actually, you know what? There's so many blessings in my life. I can turn to the gratitude channel instead. I can turn to my positive channel of like, what's right with this picture? What's a benefit? What's going well? People are embarrassed to say what things they're enjoying from the pandemic, because that somehow seems like sacrilegious and treasonous. It's like, there's a lot of things that have been really, I have to say, I'm really enjoying, not the least of which is being with all of you. Honestly, it's like, to have, 30 women from around the country and even in Canada to be able to be with. It's like, that's crazy. I would never even have thought of that as a possibility. How is that even happening? But such a huge benefit. I said, I don't want this part to end. It's beautiful. So we have to be able to appreciate it. And it does not mean that we don't recognize the difficulties. I think some people are afraid that they're being disloyal and unsympathetic and not realistic if they don't constantly think about all the things that are negative and wrong and a problem. Like somehow you're not a real intellect, you're not really a caring person, you're not an involved, I don't know, citizen, that you must be constantly worried and thinking about everything that is wrong so that we can take care of it. Now that is the burden of the Jewish people, because we are the warriors for the world, who are concerned about everything that's wrong. And that is our task, but not every minute. So being able to compartmentalize it. I was speaking about this with a woman who's an oncologist, and she was saying that seeing the difference in different patients of who is able to compartmentalize even the thoughts about their own serious health concerns, and to be able then to also live their lives. And that people with equal medical conditions can have radically different lives depending on how much they let the thoughts overtake them, and how much they are able to manage them and control them and keep them in a place. It's not saying it doesn't exist. It's not sweeping it under the carpet. It's just saying sometimes those thoughts need to go in like on a shelf for a little while and come back and visit them later, so that they're guaranteed a hearing, but they don't take over our lives. So she was saying just the difference of what she sees and how people then live whatever lives they have, however long they live, is so different. So God forbid we shouldn't have those kind of a medical crises, but the truth is our lives are being lived in the same way. It's like, really, do we seriously want to spend our time, our thoughts, because that's who we're with mostly, is our little brains here, as we are talking to ourselves nonstop throughout the day, and we are creating the playlist. We just got, on Amazon Prime, you can get music. You can choose between 70 million songs. Who knew? So we're just setting this up, and you can make your own playlist, and you can pick what you want to listen to, and then it'll play it. It's like, well, guess what? I'm like, that's such a good metaphor. Our brain has like 70 million things it could be thinking about, and we get to create the playlist if we choose to. Otherwise, it's like the olden days on the radio. You just listen to whatever they are playing for you instead of choosing what you want to listen to. So those thoughts are ours to control. And this Shabbos of song is the Shabbos of being able to have the time, the space, the airiness to breathe, so that we can think and so we can direct our lives in the most joyful way possible. So thank you so much. I want to tell you all that I am, let's see, if you are interested in joining a Tu B'Shvat Zoom Seder on Thursday morning from 11 to 12, my parsha class is going to morph into a Tu B'Shvat Seder. Just send me an email and I will send you the link for it. I don't have a way to send you all a link unless you reach me, because I don't have the email mailing list for this class. But if you send me an email, I will send you the link, and I'll send you the list of potential fruits and nuts that you might want to have on hand for it. Renee, did you have a question?
Ellen?
Yes.
Ellen, right now in the chat, I could put the Zoom meeting number for you.
Thank you so much, Renee. Great.
Give me a minute. So don't end it. I'll do it right
Okay,
now.
won't end it. Put it in the chat to everybody. And you would love to have you. Somebody in the class asked us if we could do it. I actually don't even remember who it was, some wonderful person. So somebody told me they already made their barley soup. They've got it all ready to go. And it's traditional to eat the fruits that are mentioned in the Torah as being part of the preciousness of the land of Israel. And so that will be on the list. And you know what? Let's see. Still, I'll give you the Renee is going to give you the Zoom link. Still, if you would like to, thank you very much, Lisa. Pomegranates, grapes, barley, olives, figs, and dates.
We had a chopped competition at HEA. You had to use all the ingredients in one dish. So
Oh, I love it.
yeah,
that's great.
It was fun.
What a great
very
idea.
vivid in my memory.
Very
Ellyn?
good idea. Yes.
Ellyn, does the holiday start Wednesday at sundown?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. It starts Wednesday night into Thursday.
Okay.
And yes, and so Thursday during the day is when we'll do it. You can also feel free to have wine, grape juice, because as part of the grapes is our derivatives of grapes. And so feel free with that. And the wheat can take the form of cookies, crackers. So it's a mitzvah to have this. It's a mitzvah to have cookies, cake, something treat. And some say also that once you're making all these blessings on these different things, you should try to make all the blessings on all the different foods, which includes the blessing Sheha Kol Nihia Bidvaro, that God created all things, and that would be like chocolate, something like that. Or if you like cheese with your fruit, with your apples or something, to have cheese. And yeah, so that we can say everything. So that's our goal, and would love to have you join me. And there's your fruits, and you don't have to have any of them if you just want to. And then pomegranate martinis. Okay, that sounds good. 2 batinis. I love it. Okay, so please come and join us. Would love to have you. And Tu B'Shvat is a very special, special holiday. And some people think it's like a made-up holiday, but it's not. It's mentioned in the Talmud, and there are a lot of beautiful customs that go along with it. So I would welcome you to join me, and I'll look forward to it. And if not, I will look forward to seeing you next week. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me. It's nice to see those who I haven't seen for a while. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Bye,
Yasher
everyone.
Koach. Yasher Koach.
Be
It was
well.
fantastic. Fantastic.
Bye,
Thank you.
Marsha.
Bye.
Bye,
Beth
Ellen.
Ann. I'm glad you
Bye,
did.
Beth Ann.
Love you. Bye.
Everybody, be well.
Be well. Thanks,
Be
Renee, for
well
your
is
help on
right.
the Zoom.
Stay well, everyone.
Amen. Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Bye,
we have-
Dorothy. It's good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Both Dorothy Malman and Dorothy Resnick. Take care.
Bye.
Ellen.
Bye-bye. Bye,
Oh,
Ray.
Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure.